and writing, and probably going through two, three, four times, rereading, moving stuff around, adding some more content. But the key, in my opinion, and I don't profess to be a writer, even though I wrote a book before, but to me, the key is just go at it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It is another week of Leaders Talk. And as usual, I am your intrepid host, Andrew Dupuy, Chief Relationship Officer here at Leaders Press. And I am very happy to be joined today by Sylvain Lafond. He is the founder and leader of VOKESO, and in that role, he has been successful in working with the enterprise solution planning industry for well more than 20 years. With those decades of valuable international business experience, Sylvain has segued that knowledge into books on successful ERP deployments. That's something we're going to be really interested to talk to you about today. Sylvain, welcome.
Hello, Andrew. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
We're very happy to have you. So tell us a little bit about your company and a little bit about the idea of ERP deployments for anybody in our audience doesn't know.
Okay. I'll have to talk to you a bit about myself in order to
Perfect.
tell you about
that's why we're here.
I started in the industry in the mid-90s. I was working for a pharmaceutical company who needed help with maintaining their existing software system, application system, before switching to an ERP, which is a software application that handles most business functions of any company.
Okay.
ERP stands now for Enterprise Resource Planning.
Yeah.
So I stepped in, I worked with these people for 3 years and then went freelance and worked for many years doing implementations in the US, particularly some in Canada. And then eventually moved forward with Microsoft, became a reseller in 2013, which changed our business model. And I've started growing from a consultant to become a CEO today. And along the way, as I was now selling software, not just implementing, I realized that since we work with SMBs, very often people weren't too sure what ERP stood for, what they were getting into. They weren't necessarily ready to face the challenges. So I decided to write a book, first edition, use it as a nice business card, but also to reassure my new customers that they could gain some knowledge as we work together. They could go through the book and then maybe speak our language a little bit more. So that's how I got started really with this idea before I met you guys. And then we're taking this to the next level now.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and that's really, I think, what fascinates a lot of people in our audience, because you have the journey that many of our listeners are having. Moving from being in businesses that working for someone else, having something that faces enterprise a lot, and then deciding that I want to make that change, that transition from being as part of the corporate world to being something that is my own business, my own brand, my own. So tell me a little bit about what that journey was for you mentally when you went from being part of something to deciding you're going to be yourself, your own brand.
Yeah, that's interesting. Even before working for that pharma company, I had a small business. Even as a student, I had a small business. And the business at the time was really setting up computers, doing a little bit of custom programming, training, but it didn't get me very far. It was just myself and with very small customers. So when my wife at the time got pregnant, I went for a more secure job. Okay, right. So I was a few years working in the market as an employee, but I wasn't really satisfied. I had this entrepreneurial fiber within me. And what happened really is that I saw some consultants coming in, doing work that I was able to do and being paid way more than I was as an employee. This gave me, especially when one of my friends and colleague resigned a little bit before me and became a consultant freelancer in the US and was making a ton of bucks. And so I could do the math, and I decided this was worth a try. And that's how I really got started. For the second time, I went for another go at it. And this lasted quite a few years. I had a few people working for me from time to time, especially during the Y2K period,
Mhm.
when there was a lot of work. I brought the team to about 11 people at the time. But always with the mindset of offering labor services, really programming work, integration, implementation work. And I was thinking like a consultant selling hours.
Mhm.
Um, After becoming a Microsoft partner, things changed. I had to think about marketing. I had to think about offering more than a service, offering software. And eventually, with Microsoft learning experiences, talk about monthly revenue, recurring revenue, packaging solutions. And so this whole process was an evolution from the professional standpoint
Mhm.
of not thinking like a consultant anymore, but more thinking like a business owner and having a larger scope, if you will. And at the same time, I was growing as a person. I went through a lot of leadership classes at Microsoft. I bought many books, and I had to not transform myself, but grow out of the role of a consultant um, personally as well. Think of
Mhm.
myself as a CEO, learn new people skills, um, develop my leadership skills, and that has a lot to do with fun stuff like emotional intelligence
Yeah.
and communication skills and so on. So it was really a journey that began maybe 15 years ago. And even talking to you today is new for me. It's the first time I'm on a podcast. It's I'm a bit nervous, but it's fun, it's challenging, and it's all part of, I guess, the progression. I don't see myself as a speaker, even though I was a teacher way back when. But when the second edition comes out of the book, maybe I'll have opportunities to speak in public. I'm not sure how I'm going to handle this, but I think it's just on a continuum of growth, basically.
Right. Well, I mean, because you have to take that step when you decide that you're going to go on your own. You work for something that's got a big brand name like a Microsoft. That's your identity when you're with that company. You're part of that corporate identity. When you
Yep.
go on your own, though, you have to become your own corporate identity, don't you?
Yes and no. When you're a freelancer, you do.
Okay.
Maybe like a hockey player or basketball player would do.
Mhm.
Okay. And PK Subban did a really good job of that. Uh, but right now I think a bit differently. Right now I have to think of VOKESO as its own entity,
Mhm.
and I have to think of the company as what the brand I have to put forward, not so much myself.
Right.
Now, that being said, when I'm writing a book and I'm publishing and distributing that book, I have to sell myself. That part of it, it's true. It's me trying to put myself on the forefront. And since it's not easy for me to sell myself in that way. I'm kind of low key, right?
Gotcha.
Uh, so for the book, yes. Everything else to me is the company, VOKESO's image, VOKESO's values, and I have to think of it as a separate entity, a separate being.
Mm.
So in this case, we're aligning our values and our objectives. Me in the book, trying to kind of push myself out there, and then making sure it's going to benefit VOKESO and vice versa. And a few years ago, some people helped me. We had someone in marketing, and the first person who helped me write my first book, that's what they told me basically. You have to sell yourself. You have to go out there and promote yourself and not be afraid to expose your experience and communicate what you know. And I wasn't really comfortable in doing this, but it's gradually I'm learning to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
Well, but it's also, I hear a lot of people that are in this in similar situations to you. They think, well, maybe I shouldn't do a book, maybe I shouldn't do that because I am, more insular. I'm more of an introvert. It's not something that I want to do. So, what was the process that actually took you to deciding that what you needed to have was actually a book to add with the branding along with the business?
Yeah, the first time I had this friend who had written a book himself, had gone through the experience, and he basically sold me on the credibility you have when you write a book.
Yeah.
He told me, you can't imagine how people will respect and recognize maybe your professionalism or your experience or who you are as a professional when you write a book.
Hmm.
It really gives you an edge, and I really didn't believe it that much, but I thought, hey, why not? You know, I wrote a small book. It took me some time, but it was worth a try, and it did help. And basically, I think that's, you could be doing different things, but it's true that even to this day, I think writing a book gives you some kind of an aura, you know, some kind of
Mhm.
a, like, whoa, you wrote a book. And yeah, one word at a time. And the difference between you and me is I decided to write and I wrote and you don't. But otherwise, no, it's true. A lot of everybody want, no, not everybody, a lot of people want to write books,
Right.
but the thing is you have to sit down and do it. And I think a lot of people have enough experience, life experiences, professional experiences to probably generate enough content to write a book, an interesting book. Uh, the thing though is you have to start at some point and you have to
Yeah.
just sit down and write. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, then that becomes a roadblock that I think a lot of people run into. Is so they come up with the idea of I want to write it, I want to do it, but then it's that thing that's that little piece of cheese that they're always chasing, and it's like one day that
Yep.
will occur.
Yep.
What was was there a tipping point? Was there anything that happened that just absolutely made you say, "This is now the time. I've got to do this now, or else I'm just never going to do it"?
That's an interesting question. Um, I think I'm an opportunist. It's
Mm-hmm.
in my Bose quadrant. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah.
You the entrepreneur definition.
Yeah.
I'm a specialist and an opportunist. So there was an opportunity. I guess that's the first and foremost. That's the most important factor here. Is somebody raised their hand and said, "Sly, you should be doing this." Oh, really?
Yeah.
Then I started thinking about it. Um, but if I'm going to tell you the truth, because I've been lying for the past 20 minutes, um, I started writing a book in 15, 20 years ago. It was in French. It
Mhm.
was a fantasy book, and I was writing it for my kids, my three boys,
Mm.
just because I could, just because I think I have an ability to write up to a point, better in French than English. But I started, but never finished. And so I always thought, I have this ability possibly, but one day I'll have time. One day, maybe when I retire, I can finish my book, my fantasy book. Maybe. And then when this friend came along and said you should write a book for your business, it's really great for marketing. And so I thought about it and I figured, okay, reasonable investment, good
Mhm.
for the business, let's do it. So it was quite rational, I guess, in this way. But the motivation came from wanting to care for my business and wanting to do good for VOKESO. That's how I got going.
Right.
Um, I would think for most people, it could be that they would find themselves in a position in their career where they have a bit of time. Maybe the business kind of runs on its own, and they have an inclination to share what they've experienced, especially if they've gone on this path of professional and personal growth.
Mhm.
It's giving to the next person. It's giving forward, sharing with others. It's a way of mentoring as
Mhm.
well. So I don't know if what I
Oh
said
yeah.
makes any sense, but that's kind of how it happened for me.
Well, it does, and that actually leads me to something you said earlier when you say that you wanted this instead of your business card, and that was something that we heard
Yeah.
from I think it was our third or fourth author Chris Cotranis when we were talking to him. It's like that was directly what he said to us. I want to leave this with my clients instead of my business card. So tell me a little bit about how your idea about how your book integrates with becoming a calling card to your company that brings business in that way.
Yeah. Um, the first version of the book I would drop whenever I visited a prospect. Went in for an initial meeting. That's before COVID, so that's before we did as much remote work as we do
Yeah.
today. So I would drop my book when I first met with them, or maybe when I showed up for a demonstration, and say, "Here's my book. This could help." And the goal was to try and provide credibility and reassure them that, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. With the second edition, in today's world, what I'm hoping to accomplish is to draw people in with incentives, collateral material. So first, if they're looking for help facing an ERP implementation,
Right.
never done this, they were maybe a owner or executive in a small medium-sized company, they would buy the book and then get added value from that book. Yes, experience, stories, anecdotes, and all that, but documentation that they could download and use for themselves for free. And hopefully, by the time they think about seriously selecting a solution, they might think about Sylvain and VOKESO and say, well, if I'm going to look at a Microsoft product, why don't I give Sly a call and give him a shot? And
Right.
I'm hoping this is going to happen in the US. Just a few new customers in the United States could pay for all of this effort, the time, the money that was spent, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean and that's actually a really, really good point. So when you're talking about writing a book, you have that old sales concept of pre-framing. That's something we use in sales. Like the more that the more the client knows about you before they actually sit in front of you and begin to actually discuss contracting with you and becoming one of your clients, the better chance you have of actually closing the sale and beginning to form the partnership. So describe to me a little bit about what you feel the value is of a book towards that kind of a concept.
Well, there's a free exchange of knowledge.
Yeah.
And you can offer more with a book than you could sitting down with someone and teaching them. I mean,
right.
You can cram a lot more material in a book than you could in a one-on-one session. One thing that, and you mentioned that, and it really does make sense, is you're establishing a relationship even before you've ever met that person. If somebody reaches out to me 9 months from now and tells me, I read your book, we're looking for an ERP solution, we think Business Central might be a good fit, can you help me? They will probably feel like they know me already a little bit. They know I have a sense of humor. They know I'm French Canadian. They know I've gone through this for quite a few years, and so I think this relationship, this trust that is being built with the book, establishes your credentials, but also helps people know you better. You become a trustworthy person, I suppose. If you
well, yeah, I mean, building trust, it's a part of any kind of business, isn't it? I mean, when you begin to work with someone and you're going to actually build a partnership, because we're not talking about selling a product. My book's called Don't Buy the Watch. We're not talking about getting a Rolex. We're talking about like long-term people working together. That's so integral, isn't it? The building of a relationship at the very beginning.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. We're creating a relationship. I always tell my prospects when I'm chatting with them or doing a demo that I'm in this for the long haul. I'm the owner of the company. I'm not looking to make a quick buck. I want to create a long-term partnership with them. I want to service them for the longest time possible. I want them to become ambassadors for the brand. And this is established through relationships. And you know what? Even though you sometimes go through this whole process of purchasing software with grids and tables and analysis, in the end, a lot of the solutions offer similar functionality. You'll end up most likely emotionally choosing a vendor that you trust and with whom you've established a strong relationship. That's how you're going to create that partnership. In the end, we're working with people. We're not working with we're not working with computers as much as we're really working with people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the human element is such a big deal. I mean, that was interestingly, you're talking about stuff that we mentioned on other podcasts that really resonates with me. That so many people get caught up in the tech when they're in the tech business. They miss out on the idea that it's still the people that are behind it. I mean, at least until ChatGPT takes over the world, right?
Yeah, ChatGPT will have to get much smarter.
Yes.
Well, I was just working on the book the last few days, and I mentioned, and I think I published a blog last week on my website about managing risks when you're implementing ERP. One of the risks is the people.
Right.
We're still working with people, and so you have to handle communication, change management, resistance to change, and ultimately it's not the software that's going to fail you most times. It's the people. So that has to be, I guess, the priority for any organization implementing ERP. Keep track of the fact that they're working with people, and that's where the challenges are going to come from.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's that leads to a really good segue that we can kind of get into about you as a person. When you came to this, what were the challenges that you had in actually getting this book from, the conceptual phase to realizing it as something that could get out there and get into the hands of other people?
I was lucky that I could work with my friend for the first edition.
Yeah.
Because he had been there before, he had contacts, and we were okay to publish for the local market in Quebec. The second time around, working with Leaders Press, it's more of a turnkey operation. I can work on producing the content, and I don't have to worry so much about the rest. You guys know what you're doing. You guys will the US market, which I really don't. You hopefully you're going to be able to help me perform a little bit with that book. And if I double my sales, it's going to be great. And I'm seeing that with, it's tongue in cheek, because I really didn't sell that many books the first time out. I was giving out more than I was actually selling. But this really was helpful for me to see that you would handle the whole process from start to finish. And all I really had to do was worry about creating that content. Because otherwise it's quite challenging. I mean, getting your ISBN numbers and making sure that, the book is going to get the proper visibility with the search engines and all that stuff. No one's really an expert on everything. So deal with the experts and do what you do best.
That's kind of what I was hoping that you would say. Not just the blurb for us. We appreciate that. But no, it was really it's the idea of getting help. I mean, a lot of authors, they're hesitant sometimes to do that because the books are personal. This is about you. You're talking about yourself, about your company, about something that you actually really care about. Handing that over to somebody else is a process that I feel would have to have some kind of an emotional weight to it. So what do you say to those that have maybe that empty nest syndrome? They want to keep that baby close to them and they don't want to ask for help. It's not a bad thing, isn't it?
No. I can't help but think about painters, artists, musicians. Whenever they create a piece of art, they pour their soul into this. So it's risky. You're exposing yourself. You're taking a risk as a person. A writer is the same thing. But you're maybe not the best person once that risk has been taken to promote your work, to put it out there, making sure it's seen and sold properly, even promoting yourself. So let go. I mean, I guess trust in the world, the universe, just do it and then let go. It's like creating music. You put an album out there and then you're going to let your agent and the whole system, the organization, book your tours and sell your record. And at that point, your job is to go on the shows and sing and play music, right?
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I was reading. I think I mentioned on another podcast, but so I'll do it shamelessly again, just because I'm a Bond fan. I was reading about Ian Fleming, and he said, I write 3 hours in the morning. I then take my lunch, I entertain, and I write 1 hour in the evening, and I never look at what I put. I never go back until the word "the end" is done. I don't do it because I just simply do it, no matter if it's good or it's bad. So was that something that you kind of just did when you decided to do it? Just shoot through and see how it goes?
It was a similar process because of the fact that I had a lot of topics to cover in my field, because it's a technical field. I had to create a bit of a structure for me to get into this. There were some topics at the very beginning that I identified that I wanted to cover. And then I started writing, and I would write every week, a few hours here, a few hours there, sometimes on weekends, because I had a real job. And that's how I gradually built enough content to then put it together and start assembling the parts and creating, some logic and a flow between chapters. This time around is a bit different in a sense that I'm reviewing this content, but I'm also adding a story, a fictitious story, to make it more interesting. And so that's also a little bit new for me. And it means writing and writing and writing, and probably going through 2, 3, 4 times, rereading, moving stuff around, adding some more content. But the key, in my opinion, and I don't profess to be a writer, even though I wrote a book before, but to me, the key is just go at it.
Yeah.
What's his name? Stephen King, I think, said, how do you write? 1 word at a time. So just write, and then reread yourself and play with it. It's easy nowadays with Word. You can move stuff around and easily make changes to a manuscript. So I think that's the most important thing. Just be, like James Clear says in Atomic Habits, don't try to climb the Everest on day 1. Just do a little bit every day, and you'll eventually get to where you're going.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely superb advice. And and again, that's the advice we hear from most people that are authors. And don't sell yourself short. You are a writer, sir. Absolutely. I can see a little humility working in there, but
yeah, that's why I'm going to need a PR person maybe one day.
Well, hey, that's why I'm here.
I don't like to brag, and I don't like to put myself out in front and show how good I am. I'd rather have people tell me how good I am than me telling others how good I am.
Excellent. Well, stick with us. I'll help you out. As our CEO Alenka says, I'm a camera-seeking missile. So maybe you're doing a great job. All right. Well, can you give us a little bit just right now at the end, as we're kind of wrapping up? How can our audience find you if they want to actually look to do some business with you? What's the best way they can find you?
Google VOKESO. It's one of the reasons why I picked that name. First, it means vocation in Ido. Ido is a derivative of Esperanto, which is a man-made language. So nobody had taken vokeso.com. So if you Google vokeso.com because you can't spell my name, that's going to work. You're going to find us easily. If you try Sylvain Lafond and you're American or Anglophone, it might be a little difficult.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, before we came on here, we did the whole thing where we're going to learn how to pronounce each other's names, and I kind of let the cat out of the bag that I've done voice acting before, so that's why I was able to roll it. But yeah, it's superbly interesting about Esperanto. Very few people know about that, so that's really intelligent, an intelligent tactic that you took there. I mean, William Shatner will find you because he was in that Incubus movie.
Well, more and more companies are doing it now as well, I noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Sylvain, that was absolutely wonderful. We really appreciated having you here, and the links to that should be down below, as well as the links to Sylvain's book when it is released. And we absolutely appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. We had a lot of fun, Andrew. Thanks so much. I hope I did a good job.
You did fantastic. For
conveying
your
the
first
information.
podcast, I love that we broke your cherry on the podcast right here. You did wonderfully.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right.
Take care.